Hello, everyone, and welcome to End of Life University podcast, where we share real talk about life and death. I'm your host, Dr. Karen Wyatt. I want to thank you for joining me here today. This is episode number 314, and in a short while, I will be sharing with you an interview I did with Kate Manser, who is the founder of You Might Die Tomorrow and the author of a book by the same name. I've interviewed Kate 2.5 years ago or so, and we always have fascinating and fun conversations together. So I'm eager to share this with you in a moment, but a couple of announcements first. A reminder that I'm doing a workshop on surviving the aftermath of suicide. This will take place on Thursday, September 9th, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific time. There's a ticket fee of $20 to join. It's a 2-hour workshop. There'll be time for discussion and Q&A. So you can register at a link in the notes for this episode, which you will find at EOLUpodcast.com. Look for episode number 314. And you can also go to EOLUniversity.com, and I'll have a link there to register for the workshop. So I hope you'll join me for that. Also, I wanted to let you know on my Patreon page, I can now accept annual memberships. If you want to pay just one fee for a 1-year membership, rather than paying monthly over time. And there's a 16% discount if you sign up for an annual membership. So you'll find that at patreon.com/EOLU. And bonuses that are available now are the end of life news update. Every month I come out with a new one, just letting you know what's happening in the news in the end of life realm, and also 2 Doctors and a Movie, where my husband and I review movies that deal with death, dying, and grief. And we finally got that up and going again. So we'll be having those reviews posted on a more regular basis now. So with that being said, let's move on to my interview with Kate Manser. Here we go. Today, I'm so happy to welcome my return guest to the podcast, Kate Manser. Kate is the inspiring visionary creator of You Might Die Tomorrow, a movement to help people really live before they die. Kate studies what makes people live and die happy. She is the author of the book You Might Die Tomorrow and also the newly released Alive workbook. Kate's work has been featured in O Magazine. She has spoken at Facebook headquarters, and her book has sold thousands of copies. Most of all, she writes, she is just so happy to be alive. You can find out more about her work at her website, which is youmightdietomorrow.com. And there's a second website, aliverevolution.com. So Kate, welcome back. It's so nice to have a chance to talk to you again.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's a beautiful day to be alive, and I wouldn't rather be anywhere else other than talking with you here.
Well, I've really been looking forward to this just to catch up with you. It's been probably 2.5 years or so before our last conversation. So much has happened during that time. But I was thinking, for any listeners who aren't familiar with your story or your work, maybe you could start by just letting them know how you got inspired to create You Might Die Tomorrow in the first place.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Well, I am just an average person who had this really deep realization that thinking about your death is actually the greatest motivation to live today, to live vibrantly, and to, live as big and bright and vibrantly as you can while we're still alive. And so I didn't really have a near-death experience. I had a few friends in my life who died. And as I realized the power of remembering that I'm going to die as this key to urgency, to gratitude, to joy, and feeling alive in my life, I started to do research and found that it's an ancient key. All the famous and ancient philosophers talk about it. It's in a lot of ancient and modern songs. Hey, Tim McGraw, live like you're dying. And if you start to open your eyes to mortality, you'll start to see that it is used as this profound source of motivation by so many people. But in that same vein, it is also ignored largely by society and by many individuals. And by denying death, which is an inherent and beautiful natural part of being human, we abscond and we hide a part of our aliveness. And so I'm on a crusade to awaken people to this secret immortality key, the secret aliveness key, so that we can all live our most vibrant lives while we're still alive and kicking.
Well, I love it that you have started this movement. And for me, as someone who has worked in hospice for a long time, where the focus is all about how do we help people die well and make sure that their last days of life are deep with quality and meaning and comfort and love and dignity, I have come to realize that while it's extremely valuable and important that we do help people make plans for the end of life and focus on that in some ways, the real value of it is what it teaches us about how to live right now while, where we are right now in our lives. And so your message, you might die tomorrow, so live today. That, to be honest, ever since I spoke with you the first time, that's in my mind every day. Every day I have those thoughts, and it changes the decisions I make, the way I go about my life, the attitude and mindset I have. And so I think what you're doing is so important and so valuable. And as someone as End of Life University, really, I want it to be all of life that we're talking about here. So I'm grateful that your work is helping to spread that message.
Oh, thank you. And well, I have to say that I steal a lot from you, Dr. Karen Wyatt. Oh. So much of what I do is stealing from you, because your work at the bedsides of the dying. And, before I knew about you, I, of course, discovered the work of Bronnie Ware and her blog post, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And I have a whole chapter in my book about the top 5 regrets of the dying, where I go through each one. And the title of that chapter is called What Not to Do, because we can take your work and what you've discovered at the bedsides of the dying and what they wish that they had done differently in their life and what they regret when they're on their deathbeds. And we can use that, just as you said, as life's instruction manual. So we can look at the top 5 regrets of the dying. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I had shared my true feelings and the others. And we can say, okay, that's what not to do today. That's what I should cultivate in my everyday life, so that when it does come to the time of my deathbed, I don't have to have those regrets that some people have when we get to the end of our lives.
And that's so beautiful, because I can't tell you how many patients that I sat with at the end of life said to me, I'm just now learning what is really important in life, and I only have a few weeks left to live. And they said, you need to tell people this. They need to learn it now, earlier in life. And I believe that that's so true. And again, the ultimate message being none of us knows how much time or how many days we have to live. So we can't really waste any moment. We can't be thinking, oh, I'll deal with that a few years from now or somewhere down the road, because the reality is we just don't know. And in that mystery of life and how much is going to be given to us, we can actually, if we're living in the moment as you describe, we can actually find so much richness and deep meaning in life that it becomes okay that we don't know when our last day will be.
Yes, absolutely. And that reminds me of two things. Number one, I think you know and are connected to Fee Monroe, who is another person who has done some beautiful work in the live like you're dying space. And, Fee Monroe was diagnosed with terminal ovarian cancer or cervical cancer. I can't remember which. And she, at that moment when she was diagnosed and came to grips with her terminal diagnosis, she had the similar awakening that you had through your hospice work and that I had through my experiences, which is that when you think about your death and when you think about life as a limited time offer, you suddenly get this magical, profound, crystal clarity to what's truly important to me, to what's truly important to each one of us. And you also get the urgency to start living it today. And I'll never forget, in one of the conversations that Fee and I had, she said to me, she said, Kate, and this was when she had been living with her cancer for several years. She said, Kate, when I told her that I had had my awakening about the power of mortality, not through a near-death experience, but just having some friends of mine die and really just realizing, she said, man, I wish I didn't have to get cancer in order to have this awakening like you did. And to my heart, right? Hearing that. And that just really lit this fire into me to say, we don't have to necessarily work at the bedside of dying people. We don't have to have a near-death experience. We don't have to have the loss of someone that we love and care about in our lives to recognize and really be lit with the fire to live. Certainly those events can fast track that for us, but I'm on a quest to have people have those realizations and have that sense of aliveness in everyday life without having to go through trauma to get there. And the way that we do that is by remembering that we are mortal, by embracing the idea that part of being human is to die, and to look at life as a limited time offer and use that as our motivation to not only do our big bucket list items like going on the big trip or skydiving or having a child or whatever it is for you, but also, and perhaps even more importantly, really feeling the moments of your life every day, slowing down to sip and savor your tea, to tell the people in your life that you love them, and to open your eyes to the kaleidoscope of wonder that's around us all the time. Because in the words of Ferris Bueller, if you don't stop and look around every once in a while, life is just going to pass you right by.
That's so true and so well said. And yet there's so much resistance in our society to becoming aware of our mortality. It seems to me that a lot of our society is actually set up to distract us constantly. All of the, we're just bombarded with information and entertainment and social media and all to keep us, it seems to me, from really looking at that reality. And I don't know. I know that, of course, we have an innate fear of thinking about our own dying, but I don't know why it's just so deeply entrenched. It seems to me, particularly here in our society, in Western society.
Yes, definitely. And I think as you look through ancient times, pretty much every single religion has a mortality awareness practice. But as we've gone over time and we've become more evolved, more technologically advanced, more of a consumeristic commercial society, and with more control over our health, we have just become further and further away from mortality, sickness, death, right? Which is a good thing. We're living longer. 60 is the new 30 and all of these wonderful things. But we have to, I think, in order to experience the true magic of life, we have to be aware of all parts of life. And so, a lot of people, I'm a pretty positive person, sickeningly so, I think some people would say. But, when I say that I want to experience all of life, to me, living like you might die tomorrow is just fully opening my heart and soul to everything in life. And that includes the joys, the sorrows, the successes, the challenges. And I found that as I can open myself up more to life, then my highs become higher, my lows become lower, but I don't want to just flatline through life. I want to experience all that life has to offer. And that's really sort of a macrocosm or a microcosm for accepting the beauty of being alive, but also accepting the beauty of the continuation of our lives and essences in death.
It's so true. And being willing to accept the entire spectrum of life and death is what I think opens you so much. If you run away from pain or sadness or sorrow, you will also be shutting yourself off from all of the joy and the meaning of life too. And that's when, as you described, you end up flatlining your way through it, which is really not what we're here for. It's really not how life is meant to be.
Well, yeah. And let's talk about how do you do that? So let's say you're one of you listeners, you're saying, hey, I want to be open to all of life, right? I want to do that. Well, how do you do that? Well, I don't know how you do it, but I can tell you how I've done it. And there's two main ways that I've done that. And number one, that is to condition my mind to appreciate the beauty of pain and suffering. A great book to read is I'm blanking on the name by Thich Nhat Hanh. No Mud, No Lotus. There it is. No Mud, No Lotus by Thich Nhat Hanh is a book about the beauty and transformational powers of suffering, and how that white lotus flower, in order to get to that white lotus at the top of the pond, has to climb and grow through muck and mud and heaviness. And then it comes out even more beautiful at the top. And that as a very stunning metaphor for how we as humans can transform and grow and become more beautiful, full versions of ourselves through challenge. So if you want to open up to all of life, the beauty and the pain, you have to categorize pain in your mind as a beautiful part of life and as an opportunity for growth. That doesn't mean that you won't experience pain. That doesn't mean that you'll be immune to tears and gut-wrenching sadness and grief and all of that. It's really opening your heart, mind, and soul to accept that. That's number one for me. That's how I open. Number two, you have to take away aspects of your life that are preventing you from experiencing all of life. For me, that was over the past year and a half, I've removed alcohol from my life. And most drugs, not all, but most drugs. I've removed sugar in the past 4.5 months. I have consumed 0 cane sugar. I've actually been celibate for almost a year, temporarily celibate, because I'm trying to remove all these ways in my life that I grasp to get out of pain. And historically in my life, I'm 36 now, I've used alcohol. I've used my cell phone and social media to check out and get out of pain. I've used cookies and cupcakes and ice cream to get away of pain. I've even used relationships and sex to get away from pain. And so by opening up my heart, mind, and soul, recategorizing pain as a beautiful part of being alive. And number two, removing the ways that I'm using, or the vices and things that I'm using as a crutch to close myself off to fully feeling and processing pain, I feel more alive and more open to all of the amazing facets of life than I ever have before.
And do you feel what I've experienced is the more I open myself to just embracing or receiving whatever life is offering me, including the pain and suffering, the more I can hold it. I mean, the more I can hold it with greater ease, I want to say. I'm not saying the pain goes away, but it's that it becomes easier to see it as part of me and part of my life, to experience difficulties and challenges and suffering. And so the deeper I go into that practice, then the less I resist it, and the more I'm able to embrace it. I don't know if it has been that way for you also.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, I thought, how am I going to possibly process this pain if I'm not using X, Y, and Z vices to get through it? And what I found is that as I'm removing these different vices, crutches from my life, is that they flow through me so much more quickly than when I was avoiding them and drinking them or eating them away. That I do have this, I'm discovering this profound ability within myself, and it's not just within me, it's within everybody, to feel and process my pain. And every time I process through a pain or a struggle, I get a little bit more confident, and I can see my strength a little bit more. And, I felt like a fraud, right? I didn't quit drinking and start on this path of removing these vices until January of 2020. I've been running this movement called You Might Die Tomorrow since 2016. And I didn't realize it at first, but as I continued through my spiritual growth and personal growth, I started to look at my life and say, hey, here I am talking about how every moment is a gift, how being alive is this wild and wonderful experience that we get to have every single day. Meanwhile, I'm anesthetizing myself with a couple plus glasses of wine every night. And so I started to feel like a fraud, and I started to have this disconnect between, okay, my behavior is not matching my words. And so that's when I had to make this choice to begin on this path of, if I want to be truly alive, I want to be here for all of life. I want to be here 100% awake, alive, and aware, without these anesthesia, without these vice crutches. And as I've gone down this path over the past year and a half, and let me me tell you, I loved my alcohol. I loved my wine. I loved my cookies. I loved all of those things. But now I just feel so much more powerful, so much stronger. And the realizations that I've had about, past traumas and being able to be present for other people is just beyond. So if you're wondering, my experiment in removing vices and becoming some version of Kate the non-monkus is working, and I feel more powerful and alive than ever.
And it's really interesting that you've taken this path over the last year and a half, which is also when the whole world has been dealing with COVID. So we've all been kind of in a surreal place in a way. And so that was interesting timing for this kind of new further awakening for you to happen.
Oh my goodness. Yes. And timing is so crazy, right? I worked on this book called You Might Die Tomorrow, So Live Today. I worked on this book for, I got the idea in 2015. And at that time, when I really realized that living like you might die tomorrow is the path that really made me feel the most alive and the most urgent and the most grateful. At that time that I realized that, I started the blog, You Might Die Tomorrow. And for me, my highest expression of that at the time was I was working at Google. I had this amazing job, super cushy job, but I realized that I might die tomorrow. And so I realized that I had to leave that job because I had always wanted to travel. And I didn't want to wait until I was retired when I might have a bad back, or maybe I wouldn't even make it to retirement. And so my highest expression at that time of living like I might die tomorrow was to quit the job and go traveling for what I thought was going to be a year, ended up being 2 years on the road, house sitting, cobbling together these miles and things to be able to have this trip. And I had a wild and wonderful spiritual experience on that trip. I went to yoga and meditation retreats all over the world. I met amazing people. I learned so much. But the biggest lesson came when I got back. And when I got back, I was running out of money. And so I got another corporate job, got an apartment, right? And had to go back to regular life. Well, I did not transition to regular life after my spiritual awakenings and this trip, like a graceful guru. I got mad in traffic. I got saddled with these worries about money and bills and went back to the 9 to 5. And after a few months of just really struggling and feeling dark and not very alive, I had my next profound realization, which is that living like you might die tomorrow is about, like I said, accomplishing those bucket list items, but it's really more about the everyday and truly down to the every moment. And so that was what took me on this awakening about my next project, which is called The Alive Revolution. And my next book will be called Enter the Kaleidoscope, which is cultivating that sense of aliveness in our everyday life. Because it's easy to feel alive when you're walking through the streets of Tokyo and the lights are flashing and the culture's different and you're taking everything in. Right. But it's hard to feel alive, or if you, without training yourself, it's hard to feel alive while you're doing the dishes or stuck in traffic or on the phone with customer service. And so over the past 2 years, as I've also been doing this removing of vices from my life, I've been actively training myself to be able to drop into what I call the kaleidoscope at any moment. And it's basically like being on a psychedelic drug without the use of drugs. So at any moment, I can sink down into sort of a meditative state with my eyes open, and suddenly all the colors become more vibrant. And I can look into someone's eyes and I feel like I can see light streaming off their face, and everything is just so beautiful. And I feel like I'm just really in this kaleidoscope of wonder of being alive. And so that's really what my training now is, living like you might die tomorrow is just a path to being more alive. Just like your work, your beautiful work, Karen, it's helping alive people live more alive and without regrets. And so that's what my new journey is about, is how can we feel alive in our everyday life? How can we slow down our pace of our lives so that it doesn't fly by, like Ferris Bueller says?
And I know, you emphasize the fact that you've really had to work on this. It didn't just happen for you. I mean, you have made a practice out of it. And I love your Alive workbook that you're just releasing right now, a companion to You Might Die Tomorrow, because it really is a way to help people do the work that they need to do to feel more alive. Because I think that's an important point for all of us. We can come to a realization of our mortality, but that alone is like the doorway we go through. And then there's still a lot of work for each one of us to do spiritually, I think, to reach the point where you are right now and being able to drop into the kaleidoscope. Do you agree with that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And the Alive workbook is, I created it so that by the time you finish that workbook, you will be living your most alive and vibrant life that you have ever experienced. Because in this workbook, which is heavily informed by hospice worker reports, and so, work from people like you, Karen, who talk to the people who are on their deathbeds and talk about what they wish they had done differently and what their regrets are. And so through the Alive workbook, my people who go through that will be able to release resentments, identify what's meaningful to them, experience and identify challenges to help you live more alive in your everyday life. You can train yourself to enter that kaleidoscope. And so, we want to reach our deathbed lighter, freer, without regrets, feeling like we've created something meaningful in our lives. And so the Alive workbook is literally a course to get you there while you're living.
Yes, and it offers some really helpful tools. Like in the beginning, I loved this one. I mean, these are something unique that I haven't read before, but I really like the way you put it, the Deathbed Gut Check of being able to kind of measure what you're experiencing right now with how would I feel if I were on my deathbed in this moment or with this decision I'm trying to make. And I think that's a really valuable perspective to have, but to be able to carry that with you at all times when you are needing to make a choice or decide what to do. So I've enjoyed reading that.
Oh, well, raise your hand if you're a procrastinator like I am, because that's a ton of where this whole movement and in that the Deathbed Gut Check, which I'll talk about in a second. I'll train you how to do it while we're on this, while we're on this show. But the idea of living like you might die tomorrow is built for procrastinators. It's built for people who get stuck in decision paralysis. It's built for people who live in the future and forgo the beauty of the present moment, because that's all the things that I am. I need a deadline on a project or I'll never get started on that project, right? I just work better on deadlines. And so living like you might die tomorrow, or having that phrase in my mind, oh, I might die tomorrow, you might die tomorrow. It's just a deadline on my dreams. It's a deadline on my meaning. It's a deadline on enjoying the beauty of today. And that's what the Deathbed Gut Check is built on the idea of I get stuck in decision paralysis on big problems, on stupid problems. And so it helps me make those decisions in life. So we can all do it together. So start by thinking of something that you're kind of stuck in decision paralysis on in your life. You're not really sure which direction to take. It can be a big life decision or an everyday decision about maybe should you stay home or should you go have dinner with your parents or something, for example. So get that decision in your mind, or that choice.
Okay.
Yeah. And then once you have that in your mind, you can close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself on your deathbed. And you're on your deathbed, which looks however you want it to look. You are in that part where you are doing a life review. And you're in the part of the life review where you're looking back on this decision that you thought of at the beginning of the exercise. And you observe it having been taken place in the past, and you observe how you would feel from the perspective of your deathbed, having chosen option A, let's say staying home that day instead of going to dinner with your parents. And then observe how you feel in your gut as you look back on that decision, having chosen option A. Do you feel like a heaviness or a tightness in your gut that maybe I should have done option B? Or do you feel a lightness that from the perspective of your deathbed, when pressure to succeed is gone, when expectations of others is gone, when all of that is away from at the end of your life, how do you feel? Do you feel that heaviness or that lightness? And that's it. And so, this is something that you can do in 90 seconds. This is something that as you practice it, you can do it in 5 seconds. So I will actually do the deathbed gut check most days, even like when my phone's ringing and I'm not sure if I should answer it because I'm busy and my sister's calling. It's like, okay, deathbed gut check. How would I feel if this was my last call from my sister? Right. Or, it can be applied for big decisions. And once you get good at it, it can take just as quick as a few seconds to use the power of being at the end of your life when we're not worried about the plaques on the wall or the money in the pocket or what other people think of us or what we think of us, really. We're really just left with what matters. The cream has risen to the top and we can make those clear decisions. And so that's what the deathbed gut check is it allows us to check in away from all the earthly and terrestrial societal expectations and checking in with our truest, clearest vision of what really matters.
And it really gives us a chance to connect with our wisest self in a way, our highest self. And because honestly, we already have this wisdom within us. It's just that we most of the time don't listen or we can't hear it. And so just taking that moment to stop and contemplate being on our deathbed just shifts us into a place where suddenly we're open, we can listen, and we can hear the guidance that is there for us.
Yes. Beautifully well said. Yeah. There's just something about death, right? Like that's why you're doing your work. That's why I'm doing my work. And there are so many people in this mortality awareness space that are just really trying to help people understand that if you just gently open the curtain to mortality and start to see death as that beautiful part of being alive and start to really understand that everything is impermanent, that everything is a limited time offer, you begin to open this treasure trove of presence and awareness and gratitude and clarity that is really unlike anything else that I've found as a motivational tool, and B, just this inherent gift of being alive, right? That we die is part of the gift of being alive. And to ignore that, to shut that out, we lose out on this amazing clarity and vision that we have to make our lives the most vibrant that they can be while we're here.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned earlier, I really appreciate this, the idea that it's great to have a bucket list focusing on the really big things that would give meaning to our lives. But in reality, it comes down to being able to enjoy the small moments in life. And I just reviewed a movie called The Map of Tiny Perfect Things, which you might enjoy watching. But just briefly, it's about two teenagers who are stuck in this time loop where they relive the same day over and over again. And the way they finally discover to add meaning to this endless loop of the same things happening is they start to look for what they call the tiny perfect things that happen every day. And so that is how they survive being in this loop, is that every day they look for the tiniest little moments when they see joy and love and beauty in the world. And for me, it just kind of blew my mind because it's like a silly teenage movie in a way, but it had this profound wisdom of like, that's it. When, that is what it's really all about, is being able to recognize and stop for a moment to truly see all of the little tiny things around us that are so beautiful and so perfect in their own way.
Oh my gosh, I feel like you just popped me in a transcendent state just listening to your words there and describing that. That is so beautiful. That's the kaleidoscope, right? Like that is, I mean, you can call it whatever you want, the transcendent experience, a mystical experience, you can call it opening up your right brain. The book, My Stroke of Insight by Jill Bolte Taylor describes that beautifully and talks about the anatomy of the brain and her experience really opening up her right brain through the experience of having a stroke. But there is, there's a great quote by Ian Thomas. And the quote says, and the world will take you by the hand saying, this is important and this is important and this. And it's up to each and every one of us to yank our hand back, to place it on our heart and say, no, this is important. And I feel like we can live, as Martin Heidegger says, in the everyday mode where we're making our dentist appointments, we're stuck in traffic, we're worried about our bills, we have short fuses, and we just nose to the grindstone, tunnel vision of what needs to get done that day. Or we can live in the zone that philosopher Martin Heidegger calls the ontological zone. We're just like you said, we're open to that kaleidoscope. We're open to these tiny, perfect things. And, when I started this journey, when I had my awakening 5 or 6 years ago, I was so alive and so awake and aware to the beauty of life. And I was shy about it because I thought, oh my gosh, I feel so different from everybody else who's so focused on work and money and accomplishments. And all I want to do is look at this leaf and look at the clouds and, and feel the beauty of my heart. And my journey over the past 6 years, and I use this analogy because I was working at Google at the time. I used to think even my laptop, I look at my laptop and the magic of this device is insane. I can communicate with people, watch things, write. I mean, and I wanted to take my laptop and walk around the Google office and be like, everyone, do you understand how amazing this machine is? It is incredible. And I just imagine how people would look at me and be like, security. And so in my journey of this awakening, I've gone from being too shy to talk about the magic of the laptop to now here we are 5 or 6 years later. And it's all I can talk about is the kaleidoscope and the amazing wonder of being alive and how love is the most important thing and how I have no shame at all anymore in telling every person to stop and look at this caterpillar. Stop right now what you're doing and look at this caterpillar, or stop right now and look at this tiny, beautiful, perfect thing, because that's what the beauty of life is. And it is our choice to either stay closed off to that and live in that everyday, heavy, mucky life, or to open our eyes and surrender to the beauty and joy. And that's not to say that we don't have to pay bills and we don't have to experience grief, but to choose to see the beauty in being alive, in all of being alive, is a choice and a gift that we have while we still have breath in our chests. And so I encourage you to wake up every day and choose, am I going to live alive today, or am I going to go on autopilot through my day? Am I grateful that I got the privilege to wake up today? Or am I just going to roll over and look at my phone and grumble about what I have to do? And every day that we do get the privilege to wake up, we get the honor to make that choice.
That's so beautiful. And I love your boldness and your courage, I guess, in spreading the message, because I too have felt for a long time that so many ways in which I don't necessarily fit in with other people because of the way I see things that happen. Like if I have a flat tire on the side of the road and I'm not able to change it myself, so I have to wait for AAA to come. Other people might say to me, "Oh, how terrible, how awful that interrupted your day. You must be so upset about it." And actually, no, I'm thrilled because while I was waiting for AAA to come, I got to see the most beautiful sunset. And also there were these wildflowers growing on the side of the road that I didn't even notice when I was driving by. And so, but I've always recognized it's really weird to think this way. It's really different. And it is a little hard to always represent that, to always show other people that beauty, but you do it all the time. In fact, it's all of your work. And so anyway, I admire you for that. And I'm so inspired by what you're doing.
Oh my goodness. I love that. Yeah. Standing on the edge of AAA, traffic going by, right? We can't, if we want to be in that meditative zone, we have to realize we're not going to be able to create this Eden. We have to create the Eden inside. And I love that story about looking at the wildflowers while you're waiting for AAA. I literally got put into jail once when I was in in college. I got put into jail because I was unknowingly used as a drug mule. So I ended up in the Long Beach County Jail, or the Long Beach Holding Center. And I just remember, of course, it sucked being in jail and the food sucked. And I didn't know what was going to happen with my future because the person who was using me as a drug mule hid 2,000 pills in my wheel well as I was giving him a ride from San Diego to Santa Barbara. But what I remember most from being in jail for those, 6 or 7 days or whatever, was that I got to meet some of the most interesting people and hear stories that I would have never gotten to hear. And it was something that I was able to see the interest and joy and unique experience in being in jail. And that's not to say it wasn't scary and hard, but I was able to find some positive even in back then, and that was even before my awakening. And so I think that, again, it's that mindset. And so we can talk about spirituality, right? And this person is an optimist or this person's a pessimist, but we also have to talk about the fact that we can train our spirits, right, by choosing our mindset, but we can also train our brains through neuroplasticity. I don't want to forget that we have the ability to rewire our brains through intentional thinking. And one example of something that I've been able to do over the past 2 years is whenever something frustrating happens to me, like I accidentally drop my phone and crack the screen, or I slip and fall and trip and stub my toe. Over the past 2 years, I've trained myself. I've forced myself that when something annoying and frustrating like that happens, I laugh. And sometimes the laugh comes easy, and sometimes the laugh is like a force, like ha 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 ha. But now, since I've trained my brain and I've rewired my brain, that when something annoying and frustrating happens, that I force myself to laugh. Now it just happens autonomously. And so now, the other day I tripped, my phone flew out of my hands, literally like 3 or 4 feet in the air, and landed face down on a pile of rocks and cracked my screen. And I just laughed like it was the funniest thing that I ever heard. And so if you know of someone who's like, oh, that person is a quick fuse, that person is angry, know that we all have the power to change our mindset, to change the way that we react to things with mindful and thoughtful actions and intention. And so you too can laugh when someone cuts you off in traffic. You just have to train yourself to do it and commit yourself to training yourself to do it, even when it's hard, over the course of maybe it'll take you a couple of years. But now you can get to the point where life is funny instead of frustrating. And to me, that's priceless.
It's such a good reminder, because even using a tool like the Deathbed Gut Check, the more you utilize that and help yourself get into that frame of mind, again, like you said, the more you're rewiring your brain and training yourself so that it's no longer something, I have to stop and remind myself to do that. No, it becomes automatic. You're already thinking that way. You're already in the middle of the thought process, and it's already happened without having to consciously make the choice. So there's this payoff to practicing, because it really does change your brain, and all of these things come to you more easily down the road.
And here's what that Deathbed Gut Check does. It is training you. If you do this multiple times, and if you use the Deathbed Gut Check to make decisions, you're training yourself to make decisions from the seat of your intuition versus your cognitive thoughts of what people think of you, or how much money is involved, or what success or accolade you might get. And so that's what the Deathbed Gut Check is it is training you to align with your intuition versus superficial reasons to make a particular decision. And I can't think of a better way to make decisions in life than with my true soul aligned intuition. And so that's what the Deathbed Gut Check is, just one way to get there. You don't have to use the Deathbed Gut Check to better align with your intuition. There's lots of ways to get there. But for me, that was the way that I was really able to say, okay, when I'm faced with the decision, what's my most authentic response to that?
And your workbook also has a section on dealing with the fear of death, which I think is really important, because it seems to me our society in so many ways fosters this idea that death is frightening and terrible and to be feared. And we do have our own innate fear of death, but I think our society adds to that fear when once you address it and look at it head on, death becomes much less frightening than it seems to be. But I know there are a lot of people out there dealing with a lot of terror around the idea of death and not wanting to look at it and not wanting to deal with it. So I think it's essential that we help people overcome that fear. And I'm so glad that you included it in the workbook.
Oh, yes. Here's why. And here's the science behind why that is because when you are exposed to a high alert, terrifying, sort of sensationalistic exposure to a message about death, say a natural disaster or the, red alert pandemic messaging that we're getting, or, war, then it is inherently scary. And when it's given in red flashing letters, right, this alerts our nervous system, this alerts our fear response. And so then there's this negative association with death, right? That death is doom and gloom. I mean, it's, you're dying because a hurricane comes or whatever. But the science shows that those death reminders that are more gentle, that are more based in reality, and that are more a part of our everyday life, those are the death reminders that actually reduce our fear of death, help us become more comfortable with death, and help us also use those reminders of death to help inform our most vibrant life. And so that's why even seeing my book title, You Might Die Tomorrow, So Live Today, with a picture of me, I was on a cliff on above a beach in Australia. I was with my face out and my arms back, just feeling super alive on my trip that I was on after I quit my job at Google. By seeing those words, you might die tomorrow, so live today, that there's no blood on the cover. There's, it's in the self-help book section, right? Mm-hmm. Even being exposed to that message, or the thousands of stickers that people have purchased for me and put on their cars and their mirrors all over the world, being exposed to that message in a non-threatening way helps to open that blossom of your heart to that part of your humanity that is being mortal. And so even if someone doesn't buy my book, even if someone just sees my sticker on a park bench in Taipei or whatever, that is a more positive association with death. And so I encourage anyone listening to keep following Karen's work, to follow the death positive hashtag on Instagram, because those softer, more natural, more human, brushes with mortality awareness will help to soften your heart to that part of that human part of that is mortality, so that you can reap the benefits of the presence, gratitude, and urgency that mortality awareness brings to your life.
And I think it's important that the message you're sharing is not just you might die tomorrow as a threat to people. It's the second half of the message, so live today, because recognizing that you might die tomorrow is just, as I said before, it's the doorway that you walk through to help you live fully today. And they go hand in hand, they come together. So we're not just asking people, be aware of this frightening message that you could die tomorrow. No, just allow that to be the background of your thoughts and of your view of life, so that you can appreciate everything that you have in this moment today and live it fully.
Yes. And let's be real. I mess up all the time, right? Like, I've had a bunch of awakenings in my life. I'm on this like amazing spiritual path. I wrote this book about living like you might die tomorrow, and I still forget to live like I might die tomorrow every single day. That's why the title is You Might Die Tomorrow, because that means that every day I have to check myself and be like, am I living alive today? Am I procrastinating? Am I being too obsessed with success? Am I working too hard? Am I hiding my true self out of fear of vulnerability, right? Because life is hard, life is complicated, and we need to be reminded of the beauty of life every single day, every single moment. And so that's why that message is You Might Die Tomorrow, is so that we can keep our feet, our hearts, minds, and souls planted squarely in the here and now, in the beauty of today, and reveling in the joy that we got to wake up this morning.
That's so beautiful. And speaking of feet, I know that you mentioned to me that you've taken up a practice of walking meditation, and I just wanted to ask you about that.
Oh, walking meditation. Yes. I enthusiastically am a walking meditation facilitator here in Austin, and I plan to be actually recording that so that I can share with people worldwide so they can do their own walking meditations and wherever you are. But I learned walking meditation. I had been on this journey. I had had the movement for 3 or 4 years, and I went to go visit Thich Nhat Hanh's monastery in France called Plum Village. And I was vaguely aware of Thich Nhat Hanh's work. I had read many of his quotes and really enjoyed his way of looking at life and death and being alive. But when I went to Plum Village, that was when I got to experience his version of walking meditation for the first time. And what it is it's a slow, mindful walk wherever you are, where you simply just take in the kaleidoscope of wonder that's around. You let go of your need to speak, you let go of your need to analyze and label, and you simply fully open your heart and soul to the wonder of being alive. And that was one of the first times that I realized that walking meditation is a practice of slowing down your life and taking the time to really feel alive. And so for the past 2.5 years, I've been leading walking meditations in Austin to rave reviews. I had no idea how it would go. People love it. They look drunk and high at the end because we've just walked around for 30 minutes like we were princesses and princes in an enchanted forest. And to me, walking meditation is a way to really maximize your enjoyment and feeling alive in life.
And I love that you emphasize slowing down, because it occurred to me in that moment that some people might, when they hear the phrase, you might die tomorrow, think, oh, well, then I better speed up. I've got a lot I have to get done and a lot of things to do and accomplish. But the secret really is to be able to just slow down and take all of it in.
Yes, beautiful. Well said. I mean, if you had 5 years to live, if you knew you had 5 years to live, you would live differently than if you knew that you literally were going to die tomorrow, right? If you knew you had 5 years to live, you would appreciate every day for sure. You would want to slow time down as much as possible, but you would also be focused on some of those bucket list items that you have. If you truly knew you were going to die tomorrow, you wouldn't have time to travel anywhere. You wouldn't have time to get up in a plane to go skydiving. All you would want to do is have the people that you love know that you love them, have as many of them nearby as possible, and to simply enjoy the wonder that is around you by looking at the sky, looking at the clouds, letting the warm sun shine down on your face. And so to me, the walking meditation in which you do exactly just that is the best way to live like you might die tomorrow.
Wow, it's so beautiful. I have goosebumps, but as always, I'm just so inspired by your words and the work that you're doing. And especially for me, relative to me, you're so young, and I admire so much that you have done all of this growth in a short time in your life. And so, wow, you have so much, you've already accomplished so much, and I'm so excited to see where you go next and what you discover next on your journey.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for leading the way and having me back on here. I'm just still growing. I mean, I'll tell you, I know we're winding down here, but this past July, 2021, I had really a tough month. I had sort of became rudderless. I felt like I was adrift. I wasn't sure what my purpose was. And it's just to remind everybody that just because we have awakenings and just because we learn spiritual truths and we're doing work, looking at our past and appreciating being alive and all of that we're always going to have tough moments, that is also part of being alive. And, at the end of the day, if you forget everything that we've heard today, to me, it's so important to do two things. Number one, enjoy your life. Have fun every single day, be playful. And number two, I feel that every single one of us has this profound purpose to be the most vibrant version of you that you can possibly be. We were each given this body, this personality, this set of circumstances for a reason. And yet so many of us hide behind masks. We're afraid to let our true self shine through. We hold back. We're shy. We have trouble being vulnerable. But I encourage you to make it part of your life purpose to be the most you that you can be every day, in every way, in every interaction. And I promise you that if you do that every single day, you can't possibly regret your life, and you won't possibly be able to regret being the most you that you can be when it comes time when you're on your deathbed.
Beautiful, wise words from Kate Manser. And I'll just remind listeners, you can go to the website youmightdietomorrow.com. So you can find out about the book and the Alive workbook there, and then also find out about events that are going on and just stay in touch with Kate. But I also recommend following you, Kate, on Instagram. And what is your Instagram handle? Is it
You can find me, the handle is You Might Die Tomorrow, and you can also find me by typing in my name, Kate Manser.
Okay, because you post great things on Instagram, and I enjoy following you there. That's how I just feel like we've been in close touch for the last few years. But
I love it. I'm so grateful.
Yeah. Well, Gosh, thank you so much for joining me today. This is just, you just made my whole day. This
Me too. I'm
conversation.
beaming talking with you.
Me too. We shouldn't wait such a long time the next time.
No, we won't.
We'll connect a little sooner. Well, take care, Kate, and enjoy the rest of your day, every day.
Thank you so much, Karen. Bye-bye.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Kate. I really value the work that she's doing, and I encourage you to follow her on her website, but also on Instagram. And I'll leave a link to her Instagram profile in the show notes for this episode, because Kate is really an inspired thinker, in my opinion. She's obviously on a really dedicated spiritual path too. But the message that she brings is you might die tomorrow, so live today. I think that live today is the essential part of the message that sometimes gets forgotten in our circles when we focus so much on making sure that death and dying are as optimum as possible for people, but forgetting that really the major purpose of all this work that we're doing is to help people become more aware of their mortality. Because as soon as you accept that, hey, I'm not going to be here forever, then you can turn your attention to your life right here and now, every day, and make sure it's the best life possible, because you know that it will end one day. And so sometimes I think we may forget that part of the message, and it's really important and really essential. When we can help people live truly meaningful, deep, rich, love-filled lives, we will go a long way toward overcoming fear of death. And those will all be people who will be comfortable talking about death and looking ahead to their deaths and planning for it. So it goes hand in hand. We remind people of their mortality to help them live life more fully, and we encourage people to live life more fully so that they lose their fear of their own mortality. So I really appreciate what Kate's doing, and always have a fun time talking with her. So check out her work, and the Alive workbook is really awesome as well. So remember, I'll be back next week with another interview for you. And if you enjoy the work that I'm doing and the content that I put out there, be sure to share it with other people who might benefit from it. And also go to the platform where you happen to be listening, whether that's Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, and subscribe to the podcast, and then leave a rating and review if you're so inclined, because that is also really helpful to the podcast. So I want to thank all of you who've been listening and supporting this podcast over the years. It means so much to me to know that you're out there, and it helps me keep going from week to week. So thank you, and you can always send me messages if you'd like through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Also, just email me, Karen@KarenWyattMD.com. So until next week, remember, we're here for love. So face your fear, be ready for whatever comes next, and love each and every moment of your life. Bye-bye.